What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel today. We're going live with a little mock draft. I got my buddy Andy back on the show. Andy, nice to have you. How's your summer been, dude? I feel like we haven't had you on in a couple months. So how have you been? And are you getting stoked now that it's redraft season and not dynasty?
Dude, I've been good. I am so excited for football to be starting. It's been a wild summer. Went into a glacier crevasse up in Alaska. Was searching for DB Cooper's lost treasure for a while, but I think the highlight was winning a NCAA 25 championship with my man over there. So
Gotta say, it was more difficult than we thought, but we took Arizona to the promised land. So I think we're both very proud of ourselves. So what Andy and I are going to do is probably just going to be the first one. We're probably going to do a handful more of these just to give you guys some mock drafts from some different positions and kind of just see in live time how we would play them out. I mean, we can project and give people advice all you want, but there really isn't something that's too much more helpful than just kind of seeing it and having your mind have to think a little bit. So we're going to do a 0.5 PPR mock draft here. I'm drafting from the 4 slot. Andy's going to be drafting from the 10 spot. This is going to be a 1 QB, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 2 flex. Technically, we're going to do kickers and defenses, but to be honest, I might just fill out my bench because I think it'll be more fun to talk about those guys than talk about kickers. But if you want to pick up a kicker or a defense and chat about them, I say go for it. So let's just get this thing kicked off and kind of just see how it plays out. So I'm going to hit start draft here, and you guys can just follow along and kind of see what happens here. So I am up here at 1-4. Now, I knew Christian McCaffrey wasn't going to make it here to me, so I'm not going to say I'm super disappointed. But the guy that I would take number 2 overall is definitely still sitting here, and that's going to be Breece Hall for me. I don't know if it's an old school way of thinking when it comes down to it, but I just have a hard time straying away when I think there's such an elite tier of running backs. And for me, that's 3 players in Breece, Bijan, and CMC that I just want the running back. And I'll take the wide receiver come round 2, round 3, round 4, whatever. And I'm just going to play that way when it comes down to it. So I don't know how Andy feels, but I don't think he was maybe expecting Breece to make it to him, but maybe he was. So Andy's up here at 110. How are you feeling?
Well, first, I'll tell you exactly how I feel about Breece Hall. Is we didn't talk about this before, and we're also talking about, putting out different draft position kind of guys we're targeting, and Breece Hall was the number 1 guy that I put down for. He's going like 8th overall, and I mean, I'm happy to take him at the 2 if McCaffrey's gone. So, I didn't think he was going to fall to me. Sometimes he does. But yeah, I'm super for that here. Bijan's still on the board, and he's a guy that I do really like. Like you were saying, there's only so many running backs that are going to get both the volume in the rushing, the receiving, and have an offense that is going to be good. So I think here, I like Puka, I like Wilson. It's first round, all these guys are great, but I think I'm going Bijan here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think there's the 3 running backs, and there's probably like 5-ish wide receivers I'd feel comfortable about there. And you just happen to get lucky that the computer took Jahmyr Gibbs over Bijan, which, in a mock draft, it happens. Sometimes in real life, some weird stuff happens as well.
Yeah, and coming back around, see, big high T from Team 12. Love to see the old school way. But here, it's pretty easy for me, honestly, and it's going to be Puka Nacua. So electric as a rookie. I also like Cooper Kupp later on if I don't take Nacua here, but I don't see him regressing. I think that offense is still going to be good. I think without Aaron Donald, their defense got worse, which could mean that they're going to be in, a few more shootouts, going to need to pass even more, which is only better for Puka Nacua. So, I think he's going to have a great sophomore season. So I'm going to take him there.
Yeah, that's just good value, man. I mean, it really just kind of depends what you're going for. And the best thing about mock drafts is that you can try out different strategies. Like you can take Breece Hall at 1-4 overall. And then if you swing around and you hate the wide receivers, but you love the running backs here at 2-9, maybe you shift your strategy. Like that's kind of the point of a mock draft, is to kind of just learn here. So I'm up here at 2-9. Obviously, I went Breece Hall in the first round. I'm going to take a peek here at running back. Part of me really, really wants to double dip at running back, just because I just love slamming running back and then just getting a bunch of wide receivers. But I think when it comes down to it, I like a couple of these running backs still on the board. And I don't even know which one I would take here necessarily. So this is a pick I don't think I'm in love with, but I think it's just an okay value. And I'm going to go with Devontae Adams here. Sometimes we get a little too caught up in our dynasty minds. We kind of forget that this really is just for the one season. And even if Adams takes a small step back, I still think he can produce this ADP. I don't know. Am I crazy for taking Adams there, or like, what do you think?
No, he had the second most targets last year. I think that is not going to change. I mean, he is still such an absolute monster. Looking at his Matt Harmon's reception perception score, he's still one of the most elite guys in the league. I think the days of him being wide receiver 1 overall are gone, but you're getting such a high-end consistency from him, and he still can blow up on any given week. It's not like he's just going to be like 10 points every week. Like, he can still have absolute monster games. So no, I think that's a great pick for where he goes. I mean, I would take him over, some of the other guys there for sure.
I definitely like it. It was tough, right? Like maybe Ayuk, maybe Nico, but
yeah,
I just think he's an alpha, and I think some of these guys start to split their targets a little bit.
Yeah,
I think Mike Evans is a guy that I don't think I'm going to take, but he has a very similar situation to Adams, so I would understand how someone could also be targeting there. And now I'm back up again at 3-4, and kind of like I was talking about, only one running back went, where basically the 3 wide receivers I would have been deciding between, with me taking Adams and then Collins and Ayuk going. So I'm going to go back here to another running back, and I guess I'm just going team old veteran man, because I am totally okay taking Derrick Henry here at the 3-4. I think this dude's probably worth a second round pick. And if I had taken him at 2-9, I would have felt fine as well. I just didn't want to double dip at RB. But when it comes down to it, Derrick Henry basically is guaranteed for 10 rushing touchdowns. He's been doing that on a Titans offense that is worse. And he's now going to Baltimore on a team that made Gus Edwards look almost like a stud on any given week. So I think Henry's weirdly a safe pick, especially in a standard 0.5 PPR kind of sense. I understand if you're going full PPR, why'd you lean toward wide receivers, or you might lean towards someone more like James Cook, Rachaad White, someone who might get some of those free points coming out of the backfield.
But I think Henry has one of the highest touchdown upsides coming into this year. I mean, the Ravens offense is phenomenal, and it seems like they want to give him the rock again and again and again. So no, I think that's a great pick there. Now looking here, I mean, this is probably the latest I've seen Mahomes hang out. I feel like in years past, he's usually gone in the second, especially in home league drafts where people sometimes tend to reach on quarterbacks. So I'm somewhat tempted, but I think I'm going to go with who I hope has a big bounce back this year in Jalen Waddle. He was hurt quite a bit last year with his back. Did not have the year everybody wanted him to, but his first 2 years in the league, he was so electric. I think that offense is still going to be high flying. So I'm going to pair him up to get that kind of high upside from a wide receiver too.
So then, yeah, coming around the board, man, I love Waddle. I think that's a great place to target him. Like you said, I mean, last year kind of just seemed like a weird anomaly for Waddle. Like, he was pretty good. He got hurt and missed a bunch of like half games, which really affected his like stats and points per game and total wide receiver finish, where he was pretty good when he was healthy. He just kind of got some weird injuries and had some bad luck. But they definitely are going to feature him in that offense. So I think that's a great pick. And Swinging back here around 4-3, curious to think if you go Mahomes as you did just talk about him, or are you going to stick to your guns and kind of just go late round QB?
I like doing late round QB, but I think more than that, I like just taking value when it's there. And I think that this offense is going to be a little bit better this year than it was the previous year. It was still a good offense, but it wasn't like the elite Mahomes that we've seen in some years past. And I think adding Xavier Worthy, we'll see about the Rashee Rice suspension, and even Hollywood Brown, even if he's not, who he was back when he was in Baltimore, I still think it's going to be a better offense. I mean, I love Pittman. I love DK. I think really for me, it's between Metcalf and Mahomes. And I think we're going to see what happens. I'm going to go Mahomes.
Yeah, I actually, as someone who knows Andy fairly well, kind of surprised to see him pass up on the guy that I'm pretty sure I'm just going to take right now. And that's going to be Michael Pittman. I mean, this dude, I thought I loved Michael Pittman as a guy who drafted him in our dynasty draft years ago as a rookie. But I think Andy May has overtaken me as the biggest Michael Pittman fan. I know, but I understand going Mahomes. Like you said, I know it's oversimplifying this thing, but I do truthfully believe in the sentence that, like, you can't win your league in the first 5 rounds, but you can definitely lose them. It sounds broad, it sounds silly, but I do think there's a lot of truth to that if you believe in your ability to play the waiver wire, make trades, and just kind of adjust your team on the fly. You just want to load up with guys that are difference makers, and Patrick Mahomes is a difference maker when it comes down to it, especially in the 4th round here. But like I said, man, I feel great about getting Michael Pittman here. I think he's a good balance to my team with Adams and Henry being a little older. I really like getting Pittman here. Now, the 2 guys I totally would have taken just made a video about how much I love them. Just got sniped by the computer. So team 1 and team 3, hats off to you guys for taking Tank Dell and George Pickens right from under me, because that's who I was hoping would swing back around. I honestly almost wanted to go with one of them over Pittman. I just do really like the security Pittman brings, and I think he's going to have a safer season where I could totally see Tank Dell and George Pickens outperforming Pittman. I think Pittman is the safer pick right there. And now when it comes down to it, this is actually kind of a tough pick. I mean, I'm probably not going QB here, as I've already seen 5 go, and I think at this point, I don't hate going Anthony Richardson here, but I just feel good enough about what's going to swing back around to me. So I think here, I really like a couple of the values here at running back. And to me, that's going to be between James Cook and Kenneth Walker. I think James Cook, more of an upside play. I think Kenneth Walker's probably the safer play. So I think I'm actually going to go James Cook here and just try to get another running back on this team. We're playing 2 RB, 2 flex, 2 wide receiver. So at this point, I'm going to my flex position. So I don't feel bad about going 3 running backs in this situation. If this was a 3 wide receiver league, however, I think I probably would have gone wide out there.
Yeah. Was there any thought adding to it with the potential stack of having Richardson and Michael Pittman?
100%. That actually was something I had to almost talk myself out of. I think there's a chance that maybe not in a mock draft like this, but I potentially think in a real draft, there's a chance that Anthony Richardson would swing all the way back around to me. Just because 5 teams have already taken quarterbacks, right? And there's definitely probably 4 to 5 guys in every league that are going full late round QB. But just when it comes down to it, there's a lot of guys further down this quarterback board that I just feel really comfortable about. I mean, I'm fine taking the consolation prize of Jordan Love and then adding Jaden Daniels later or anything like that. I think I just feel comfortable about, where I think I just drafted a starter for my team. Not that a quarterback wouldn't be a starter as well, though.
No, for sure. And I mean, I love the upside of Anthony Richardson. We talked about him back a few months ago for Dynasty, but there's nothing wrong with just bulking up on those positions that you have to play more of, especially in a double flex league like this, where you could, they're all still starters. And then if somebody goes down, you have somebody elite that you can still plug in there.
Yeah. So what are you looking at here? Obviously, you're not doubling up on QB with Anthony Richardson as much as you love him. So
no. And unfortunately, if I knew that he was going to make it all the way back to me, I might not have taken Mahomes. But that's something that, you got to play the game. And I'm still happy with the Mahomes pick there. I usually don't like doubling down on quarterback and tight end this early in the draft, but Trey McBride is really, really speaking to me here. I think he has, tight end 1 upside overall. I like the offense going in. I think the addition of Marvin Harrison is only going to help him get more opportunities to score touchdowns. There's a couple receivers I like as well. I like James Conner. I think I might play a little game here. I feel like McBride is going to go for sure in between. And there's a chance because Team 12 has already taken 3 running backs. I don't think they're going to take Conner. Team 11, we'll see, but I'm going to see if he can make it back to me. I like DeAndre Swift as well. So I'm going to take McBride, play a little game, see what happens.
Yeah, he was actually someone I was considering at 5'3" as well. Definitely a couple of these players go, and that's how it works, man. It's like you almost speak these guys into existence, and then they are guaranteed to get picked up. But like you said, McBride has a chance to be an elite option this year.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're regretting your pick, even if a guy you wanted just went.
Yeah. And, I'm okay with it. I think DeAndre Swift is still in this tier of running backs who's going to get the bulk of the carries on what should be a pretty good offense. Almost the fact that there is a rookie quarterback. Hopefully you think that they might lean on the run a little bit more. Or at least, give him some opportunities for checkdowns. So it's really kind of between, for me, Amari Cooper and DeAndre Swift. And I think I'm going to go Swift here, and we're going to see who can make it back to me coming up.
So something that I'm curious too about, just asking you as well, Team 6 here, Rome Odunze at 6'7". How would you feel about that? Do you think that's about right? Do you think that's kind of high for some of the wide receivers that are on the board? As much as we like Rome Odunze, I don't know if I could take him that high with some of these wideouts that just I feel like you're staring at some pretty good production from a couple of these guys.
Love Rome Odunze in Dynasty, but we saw it with JSN last year. When you're in an offense with 2 phenomenal wide receivers, there's not always room for a third guy to come in, especially with a rookie quarterback. And as great as we all think Caleb Williams is going to be, I'm a huge Packer fan. I still think Caleb Williams is going to be great. Don't like that he's on the Bears, but that doesn't change the fact of how good I think he's going to be. I don't think in his rookie year he's going to be able to support 3 wide receivers to be fantasy relevant. I still think DJ Moore is solid. I like Keenan Allen, but I think Odunze this first year is going to be the odd man out, especially to start the year. And especially in the 6th round when there's so many other options on the board, I don't think I'd go for him there.
Yeah, I like him as a talent, just like you said, but right here at 6'9", basically I am looking at going wide receiver. I think the elite quarterbacks and elite tight ends have all gone. I think McBride was kind of the last of that tier, along with Anthony Richardson. I really wasn't ever going to be thinking Joe Burrow in this round. If I'm going to take a guy this early, unless it's Patrick Mahomes, maybe CJ Stroud, I want someone that's going to be running the ball as well. So I'm looking at wide receiver here, and there's 2 guys on this board. There's definitely more than 2, but the 2 guys I'm kind of deciding between right now is Jaden Reed, someone that I really like, and I think is just a great guy. I think Jaden Reed's the epitome of just a great flex play in your league. I think if you play Jaden Reed at your flex, you have a chance for a top 10 wide receiver every week, as he showed last year. And yes, he's not going to be a top 15 wide receiver every single week, but when you're watching a game and you're watching the Packers, Jaden Reed is involved. And that's something I like on my team. I know that may just be a superstition, but I love targeting players that when you turn the game on, you see him, and you see him involved in the offense. The other guy that actually I kind of spoke about a couple weeks ago as a sneaky guy, I really liked the value of, and I actually think I might like him a little more now, and that would be Calvin Ridley. I just think when it comes to the Titans offense, I think we expect the Titans offense of old, and I think the offense is going to look a little more like the Cincinnati offense with the coach coming over. So I just think there's going to be more passing. And then with the news of DeAndre Hopkins hurting his knee today, he might get off to a slow start. So Ridley could be an interesting pick here, but I'm just going to go with my gut. I'm going to go Jaden Reed. I love him. My wide receiver 3, I may not have the strongest quarterback or tight end as I haven't picked them, but I got to say I'm loving how my flex position has turned out in this league in a 2-2-2 format with James Cook and Jaden Reed. That's a strong flex, and I'm probably going to be beating some of my opponents at that position every week. So obviously I'm trying to fill out my lineup. I would look at quarterback and tight end, but kind of how I was chatting earlier, we're kind of out of my tiers that I view of as like complete difference maker. So I think I'm going to be going back into the well and trying to get some value at running back or wide receiver. And as I just kind of talked about, I think I'm just going to go Calvin Ridley. I think that's a good pick. Him as my wide receiver 4. I really don't have to rely on him on any given week. But if that offense is a little more pass happy than we're expecting, maybe the Titans offense is a little better than we think. Will Levis is a little better than we think. I think Ridley could be startable in certain situations, and he has a top 24 outcome in his possibilities. I'm not necessarily projecting it, but he's not going there. And that's something I think is huge when drafting redraft guys. It's like, not everyone you have to draft has to be a top 12 wide receiver. Where are they going, and what is your expectation for them? And as long as they can, just like outperform that expectation, they're usually a pretty good pick.
Yeah, Calvin Ridley was somebody I was really hoping was going to slide back to me. So a little bummed that you snagged him at the 7-4 there. I feel like he would have fit super nice in my flex. Did you have any consideration to take Evan Ingram at all? I feel like I have him pretty high for tight ends, maybe a tier behind McBride, but I think, the late 6th, early 7th, I'm super happy to snag him there. Was he in your thoughts at all, or just?
I do like Evan Ingram. I just think that I feel like last season might have been his peak. And even last season, I viewed him as a good tight end, but not like a game-changing. Like you had Evan Ingram, you were winning every week. And I also, too, as I chatted about before, I am a big Christian Kirk guy, and I think Christian Kirk being out was a big difference in that offense. So I think Kirk being back, Brian Thomas being back, I think the ceiling's a little lower for Ingram, but he's a great play. And I do think you're not going to be too upset starting Evan Ingram at tight end on any given week.
Yeah. And now here I'm at a little bit of a weird spot, because if I didn't go quarterback and tight end and I had my flex filled a little bit more and I could afford to add a little bit of bench depth, I think Rashee Rice would be my pick here. We don't know how long the suspension is going to be yet. And, if it's 8 games, I wouldn't want to pick him here. But if it only turns out to be, 4 games, then I would be so happy getting him on my team to presumably come in and be the wide receiver 1 for the Patrick Mahomes offense, especially with Patrick Mahomes on this team. But I feel like since I don't have either one of my flexes, I can't really take him here. So, I'm looking at Jonathan Brooks, but the same thing. He's hopefully going to be ready for the season. Deontay Johnson I like, but I think this is a guy I haven't really taken in mini mocks, and nobody was really in love with him as a prospect, but when he got the work, he had so many carries, and sometimes at the end of the day, that's what it takes, especially to be a flex. So I'm going to go Zamir White. 7-10.
I definitely like the Zamir White pick in a redraft sense more than in a dynasty pick. Yeah. And just like you said, he's going to touch the ball this year. We don't know to what extent he's going to dominate touches, but he's going to be involved. And a 7th round investment is not that punishing if he turns out to be Alexander Madison from last year, which is my worry. That's my worry with Zamir White. And I think that's everyone's worry, is that you're like, really? I took this dude? This is the worst. This is so boring and there's no upside. But, if they lean into him, I don't hate it. And just like you said, this is such a classic mock draft. And I think anyone watching this who has been playing fantasy football for a long time knows the exact position Andy's in, which is you'll love your QB, you'll love your tight end, and then you go, wow, I hate my receivers right now. Or, wow, I wish I had 3 more wide receivers on this team. And
that's why I usually like not going quarterback, tight end so early. I'm fine with doing one of them, but going them 4th, 5th back to back, I didn't love. It's just I like the value on those players so much. So we're going to see how it turns out. And there's still some guys I like here. Honestly, I'm going to jump down quite a bit lower than ADP because, I feel like I want a little upside. And so I'm going to take rookie wide receiver Keon Coleman to fill out my flex. He's a chance at being the number 1 guy on the Bills. And that's an offense that I want to get behind. I mean, there's a chance also that it's Curtis Samuel and it's Dalton Kincaid and he's option number 3 and not as fantasy relevant as we want him to be. But at this point, I'm going to take that risk. And I mean, I'm going to be adding and dropping guys during the season anyways. So I'd rather know, a few weeks in if I'm going to keep him than maybe take somebody else here who doesn't have that same upside on my team.
Yeah, 100%. And for me here, if you guys are watching on the thing, I'm looking and I've clicked on show drafted and I'm looking over at tight end because I'm trying to do a little research here to see how many teams have drafted tight ends just via this board. And I think I counted 9 or 10. It's looking like 1, 2, 3, 4 teams don't have a tight end. There are a couple of guys I don't hate at this value, but I think I'm just going to kind of play I'm going to play the game. I'm going to play the draft game that I don't think too many of these tight ends are going to get sniped by the next time I come all the way back around the board, or even by my next pick if I want to take them, as all 3 teams have a tight end to the left of me, if that's what I'm feeling. And there's a running back here I really like the upside for. Talked about him in a recent video as well. But I'm going to go Brian Robinson. And this is someone that I've actually just slowly started to like more. Some of it came from watching a little of his tape. Some of it came from just kind of looking into his season last year. And some of it just kind of comes from my perception that I think this Washington team is going to be a little better. And even if he does what he did last year, he's a good pick at this value, let alone the upside of him maybe being a little better. Maybe he catches some passes. I mean, Kingsbury's coming over from the Cardinals. He wasn't with the Cardinals last year, right? But 2 years ago, and he used a bigger back in the passing game in James Conner. I'd be curious to see if Robinson can get some of those catches. Obviously, Austin Eckler is going to take some as well. But I just think there's a little untapped upside for Brian Robinson that if you're getting into this tier, he's one of the guys on my list. He's not the only guy, but he's one of them. So I'm looking at wide receiver here as well. And I'm really just not in love with anyone on this list too much anymore, with the exception of Rashid Shaheed, because I just love Rashid Shaheed, but I will not be taking him here. So I think I may actually look into quarterback and tight end here. And when it comes down to it, I think there's a QB here that I feel really good if I'm waiting till round 9. I really like the upside of my flex position and the depth I've created. So I think Brock Purdy is the perfect quarterback to go along with this team. Someone who's just going to give you a weekly good floor. And Brock Purdy actually has some more upside than we all think. Just as I say that, of course, the computer has 3 teams double up at tight end. But I'm totally fine with that. There's still some guys hanging around that I like. And this is what mock drafts are, man. So hop on the train.
And, you watch this on a mock draft, and as people who are really into fantasy, if you're in a draft with people who love fantasy football, they're probably not drafting 2 tight ends. But for your home league drafts, your office league drafts, 2 tight ends, 2 quarterbacks happens all the time. So it's definitely something you got to be ready for, to be able to pivot and to know your league too. Like, I know when I'm drafting with people that I work with, like, those quarterbacks are going to go off the board pretty quick, and the backup quarterbacks might go off the board pretty quick. So I don't want to reach on a guy, but then once it gets to that tier where it's like, well, I'm fine with a few guys, but if it gets past this point, I hate it. I know I need to grab a guy, even if it's earlier than I want to take him, just not to be in that position.
Yeah, I mean, there really is so much logic behind tier-based drafting. And that is exactly why you should be putting your own players in tiers or watching or listening to someone you trust in and using their tiers along with your own information, because you can really find out. If you're like, hey, are there 5 quarterbacks in the tier left? Then I probably don't need to take one. But if you're at the last guy in a big tier for you, then maybe the urgency to take one is totally worth it for you.
Yeah. And here coming up, let's see. I've got my roster fully filled out, so I'm not looking at quarterback or tight end at all, especially with taking them early. Just looking to add depth. And I think who I'm going to add here is Gus Edwards. He's old man Gus, but coming into that Harbaugh system, I think he's going to get the bulk of the carries. I feel like it will be spread around a little bit, but he's the guy that I'm leaning on, especially as an RB4. Like his value there.
Another double stack at tight end. Team 11 really solidifying the heavy package for the flex position here.
And honestly, what's great about this is even if you haven't taken a tight end yet and somebody is bulking up on them, these guys are going to get dropped to the waiver wire in a couple of weeks. You're just going to be able to pick them up. So it just allows you to take more shots on guys who could be really valuable for your team than doubling down on, a position that you really only need one of. So
100%.
I don't hate it. And there's one guy here I like above the others. I just called you about him today, actually, and that is Romeo Doubs. And you took Jaden Reed, and I love Jaden Reed and what he could be for this Packers team. I like the upside of Watson, but hearing Jordan Love talk about Romeo Doubs, hearing Jair Alexander talk about Romeo Doubs and the coaching staff, him always being in 2 wide receiver sets, I think he's being overlooked that he could actually be the one in this offense. I think he's also fairly safe as well. So I think as my 4th wide receiver, he is a smash for me. And also as a Packer fan, I got to get some green and gold on the squad.
Always take a little of Andy's Packers knowledge with a grain of salt here. I am a Titans fan. I guess I did take Calvin Ridley, but I thought that was a good value as well. So maybe I shouldn't be saying too much here. Also just want to give a shout out to our boy, Andrew Bassett, checking out the show, recently married. So congrats, Bassett. Thanks for tuning in, buddy. We appreciate you watching. Please don't share all of our secrets along to everyone, but feel free to share some. We are here to help you win as well. It's just not about Andy and I. So this is an interesting position, man. Part of me thinks I just have to take a tight end now, because I just fully expect to continue these guys to double and triple up at tight end. Very unfortunate that a couple of the guys I would have taken have just gone. But when it comes down to it, I'm pretty okay if I'm going to wait this long for tight end, just ending up with someone like Pat Freiermuth. I think Pat Freiermuth had a weird season last year. I think the coordinator change is going to be super big for him. And I think Deontay Johnson is going to be big for Pat Freiermuth. That's one of my biggest things about the George Pickens potential breakout as well, is that Deontay Johnson was just a very good route runner. You take someone like that off the team, it's not necessarily this just only based on a vacant target thing. I'm not a huge believer in that, because I do think targets are earned, but it's a lot easier to earn a target when you don't have someone who's such a killer route runner like Deontay Johnson earning targets as well.
Pat Freiermuth had great seasons before, and then he was injured the other year or injured last year. And he's proven that he can be a solid fantasy football contributor. And as somebody who's going to probably be the number 2 on that offense, that is only going to get better with either Russ or Justin Fields at quarterback.
I think the tandem of Russ and Justin Fields. Now, am I targeting them in a super flex sense? That could be argued yes or no, but I think they'll be able to produce a couple weapons on this team. And I think Pickens and Freiermuth are the 2 guys I think I don't feel too bad about here. So now that I've got my tight end, I've got my quarterback, it's just straight up depth building time at running back and wide receiver. Maybe I'll dip back into QB and tight end later in the draft. But at the moment, I feel fine about it. Like Andy said earlier, a lot of guys doubled up, and I think you can find tight end depth on the waiver wire when people drop these guys when Rico Dowdle scores 2 touchdowns week 1, and we think he's the starter, and turns out it's Zeke or whatever. I mean, we all know that situation. So someone that I'm just going to keep going down my list here, and I think this is killer value on this player, and I'm going Chase Brown here at running back.
I need you to not talk about how much you like Chase Brown right now, because
I was going to stack it up.
I was trying to trade for him in a dynasty from Bassett, and he rejected my trade offer. So we got to
already knew. He already knew. He already knew, man. He saw it coming. But just a good value. I mean, in my video, if you guys want to click on it, go for it. But the short thing is, even if Chase Brown gets about 60% of the work, I think he's just going to outperform this ADP. I don't think he's going to be some top 15 running back, but I just think at RB 40 something, he's probably going to outperform that because the Bengals offense is pretty good.
Yeah, no, I like him, and I think I do prefer him over Zach Moss, who I also don't hate, drafting. It just kind of depends on where he's going. But right now, I think there's kind of one guy I need to get on the squad. We're still looking for depth. This guy definitely has high upside in an offense that should be better with a new offensive coordinator. And as the number one fans of Rashid Shaheed, he's got a place in the squad.
I mean, big offseason for Rashid Shaheed as well, man. I remember sending you a tweet. The dude got a contract extension just for 1 year, but $5 million. This dude was an undrafted player from Weber State. Rashid Shaheed, we love you, man. The dream would be to get Rashid Shaheed on the show. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but if we get Rashid Shaheed on the show, we know we've made it.
Oh, that would be, if only. One day, my brother.
One day.
And now, coming back around, it's still either wide receiver or running back for me. Kendra Miller's been dealing with injuries. He is a guy I have liked and was targeting before that news came out. Come draft time, if he is healthy and is starting to, get in there in some practice reps, we see how he looks in the preseason, I might be going after him here. But Rico Dowdle's also on the list, and maybe this is a little bit of a homer pick, but the Packers have usually used multiple running backs. Even when Aaron Jones was there and looked phenomenal, he wasn't getting 80% of the carries. And I feel like Marshawn Lloyd, as long as he can hang on to the football, could be that number 2 that gets a lot more volume than people might think. So he's the guy that I'm going to add here, just, shooting for at least something kind of consistent, where then if Josh Jacobs gets hurt, he could be a phenomenal play. But I think he's at least going to be flexible most weeks.
Yeah, just kind of going along with you said, I mean, maybe it could be A.J. Dillon. I really feel like that time has come and gone. I don't really think it's A.J.'s backfield at any point. I love Josh Jacobs. I think he's set up for a pretty good year. But like you said, they've used multiple backs, and I can't imagine they're just going to just ride Josh Jacobs into the ground. They drafted Marshawn Lloyd for a reason, and he's going to touch the ball. Now, we'll see what he does with those touches, right? I mean, if he's just an average player, he's probably not going to earn more, and maybe he's more of a future play for the Packers. Mm-hmm. But that's something we don't know yet. And just the opportunity cost when you get down here to these later rounds is, I just don't really feel like you need to be targeting guys that are going to be wide receiver 45. You need to be targeting guys that have the upside to be a top, 36 player, I think, at your position. I think that would be the bar I'm trying to reach, because that means you're just outperforming other people in certain positions. So once again, I'm really just looking for depth right now. I feel great about my running back core. Chase Brown, Brian Robinson, James Cook, Derrick Henry, Breece Hall. That is absolutely nasty. If I end up with that running back core in any redraft league, I'm just going to be absolutely ecstatic. And I feel pretty good about my wide receiver core as well. But I think I would like to add one more body, maybe someone with a little upside, and just kind of see what they can turn into this year. So I think the guy that I'm going to take a peek at, and maybe this is a reach, maybe I'm being crazy, but I'm taking Dontavian Wicks here at 12.9. And I think it's just a pure upside play for me, where if Dontavian Wicks turns into something in the first couple of weeks, I'll know I have something and I can use this guy. But if it just looks like the snap share is not going to be in his favor, he's a pretty easy guy to cut bait on, I feel like, and add someone that's going to be a little more value to my team, or maybe I have an injury. We don't really know. And then swinging back around here at 13.4, I'm definitely considering adding another tight end. But the guy that I think I might have gone after, A, I took Dontavian Wicks, and B, Luke Musgrave just went. I think that's another guy that has some upside. But I just don't really love any of the tight ends here at this point. I'm happy to play the Pat Freiermuth game. And if someone starts playing better, drop in, pick them up, pick up another tight end, etc. And kind of same with the quarterback position. I feel pretty good about Brock Purdy. I weirdly think he's being underrated in a redraft sense, just due to the fact that this dude was basically a top 8 quarterback last year. And there's just so many quarterbacks we like that someone has to get pushed down the board. And it kind of just seems like Brock Purdy's been pushed down a little bit. So at the moment, I'm kind of just looking at depth. I just was looking at the White House last round. I didn't really love what I saw. But when I'm looking here at running back, I think there's a player I really don't mind taking a shot on. I think he's got some upside, and I think he's playing behind a player that in the past has been known to miss some stretches of games, and that's going to be Ty Chandler here on the Vikings. I do think Aaron Jones is a good pick because he brings weekly upside if he is the starter, but he hasn't made it through a full season in a while, and I think I'm going to get some games out of Ty Chandler if necessary.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as a longtime Packer fan, Aaron Jones is electric, and in the playoffs last year was electric, but health has been somewhat of a concern as a smaller guy, and Ty Chandler was solid last year. So, I think if they do a little bit of a split, you have, and if something happens to Aaron Jones, you got a great guy, and he's also somebody who in these last few rounds, these are all guys that there's going to be a waiver wire pickup that we're all going to want week 1, and somebody's going to get cut. And where I'm at right now, that's kind of where I'm leaning is I'm going to go for maximum upside. There's a few guys that kind of fit that. I think Jaleel McLaughlin, if he is the number 1 back in Denver. But also at wide receiver. Now, this feels real gross, and all the reports out of camp have not been good. But there is still a slight chance that Quentin Johnson.
Oh my God! I knew you were going. I knew you were going there
for this team. And what is great about this pick too is I have someone who's going to be so easy to cut if it's not the case, because one of these guys is going to have to go because there's going to be better players on the waiver wire, and if he's not the number 1 guy, he's going to be the easiest guy to cut in the world. So I'm just making my life simple right now, and I'm going to put him on the board.
There is some logic behind that. I mean, all you need to do is see one dropped pass out of Quentin Johnson week 1, and he's just straight to the bench and straight to the waiver wire. And then you can pick up whoever you want. And just to reiterate kind of what Andy and I said earlier, just for this exercise's sake, we're going to not take a defense or a kicker just so we can talk about a couple more players each. In a general sense, that's your own league rules, right? Some people don't allow you to do this. Some people allow you to take extra bench players and then pick up your kicker defense. So always be asking that in your league. It is a strategy I don't mind if it's something you're allowed to do.
Yeah, I like doing it if your draft is farther out. Like if you are drafting in mid or late August, I would rather pick up extra players in the event somebody gets injured. Snag a backup here just in case the starter goes down in training camp or gets hurt in preseason or whatever, and then you have somebody elite on your team. Whereas if my draft is right before the season actually starts, I'm probably just going to fill out my roster with a defense and a kicker, especially right here. There's some defenses that have great matchups for the first few weeks. some kickers where, okay, I'm not going to be playing the game all season. I'm just going to play them. But here, I mean, I talked about him last time, and I think for that reason, I'm going to go Jaleel McLaughlin. Just that backfield in Denver right now seems so convoluted that, I'll take the risk or the shot that hopefully he's the guy.
Yeah, I really like Jaleel McLaughlin. He's someone I added in a bunch of leagues last year, and we don't really know how the backfield's going to shake out there. I mean, I tend to be someone who doesn't buy into too much hype over the summer or negative hype. And when it comes down to it, I mean, like, I'm not a huge Javonte Williams fan, but I feel like it's probably being overblown. And come week 1, he's probably the starter. But I think Jaleel McLaughlin's going to be on the field. He made plays last year, and he's an explosive player on a team that kind of lacks explosive players. Like, I mean, Cortland Sutton's a fine possession wide receiver, but he's not some speed demon that's burning. And we all know Sean Payton wants someone out of the backfield that can make some big plays. So someone too, kind of just going along what Andy said, if you are going to play this game where you're not going to take a defense or a kicker because your draft is in August 20th, right? That's like 2 full weeks, if not a little more, until the season starts. So I think it's smart to take players that could potentially benefit from an injury. And if you snag them and that injury happens, you have someone that grows in value. And if not, you just cut the handcuff running back that you don't want and you just move on with your life. So I think one of the best guys to do that with is just staring me in the face right here. And that's going to be Tyler Algier. Like, when it comes down to it, it's like the role, I'm not going to put anything into the universe about anything, but that's just a straight up handcuff pick. That's all it is, right? It's just a handcuff, and if it happens, it happens. And another one I'm going to do, and this kind of in a different sense, but someone, and this is kind of a trend we've seen, man, is this guy holds people down, and then as soon as he gets out of the way, that player tends to succeed. And I'm going to go Ben Sinnott here, tight end for Washington. Has Zach Ertz there on the roster, but Zach Ertz is an older player. Zach Ertz can get hurt, and I like the upside of Sinnott that this is more of an injury play, but maybe I decide to cut Dontavian Wicks or Chandler because they get hurt. Who really knows how this plays out? But I think Sinnott's got some upside, and I don't mind adding him here as just a sit and wait kind of player if I am looking for a more upside tight end than Pat Fryer.
No, for sure. Rookie tight ends don't often produce for fantasy, and yet last year the tight end one was a rookie tight end. So it can definitely happen. So here at the end of the draft, why not shoot for the moon and see what happens? Also, with Bijan on my squad, I am a little upset I didn't think about adding him instead of McLaughlin, just in case that were to happen. Like, if we were drafting right now, August 1st, and for some reason, you're doing your redraft already, and I would definitely be skipping out on some of the defenses and the kickers and taking backups, either for your guys or, like you said, high upside backups. Here for my last pick, I'm going to take a guy who fooled me once, shame on you. Fooled me twice, shame on me. Fooled me 3 times, I guess still shame on me. Fooled me 4 times. It's back on you again because you're taking advantage of me. And that is Rashad Bateman, who all the reports out of camp saying he's great, like they have for the last 3 or 4 years. Who knows? Maybe he gets a Devontae Parker-like career. Same thing with my last couple picks. I will know right away if this is a guy I can cut or this is a guy that I want to actually have on my team. And who knows, with the new kickoff rules, maybe he's their kick return. He was electric as a punt returner. So, there's not a lot of guys here that I'm in love with when you get down to round 15. So,
yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? And sometimes you almost don't want to take guys you're in love with because it gets harder to cut bait on them, right? Like, if you take someone you absolutely love, you might not want to let them go. But if you take someone that's easily cuttable, like, it's not as hard to let go of these guys. So, Andy, why don't you give us just a quick review of kind of just like your starting lineup and a couple of your bench players? And is there anything you would have changed? now that you see your team at the end of the draft, or you kind of like how it played out?
I like my team. I'm not in love with my team. I'll say I have solid running backs. Obviously, Bijan with that upside, and then the rest of the guys I feel good about. I think upside wide receiver I have in Puka and Jalen Waddle, but then if one of them doesn't hit, my other guys, we'll see. I think if I would have known Richardson would have gotten to me, I don't know if I would have taken Mahomes, and I might have gone Cooper Kupp there, or DK Metcalf is a guy that I absolutely love. But I guess I'll go through the lineup. Quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. Running backs, Bijan Robinson, DeAndre Swift. Wide receivers, Puka Nacua and Jalen Waddle. Tight end, Trey McBride. Flexing, Zamir White and Keon Coleman. And on the bench, Gus Edwards, Romeo Doubs, Rashid Shaheed, Marshawn Lloyd. And then it gets real gross. Quentin Johnson, Jaleel McLaughlin, Rashad Bateman.
Bunch of studs. Bunch of studs there at the bottom of that roster.
But I will say I do think it's a good mix of safety and upside where, I'll know what I have pretty quick, and especially a lot of my bench guys. But then also in some of my starters, if Jalen Waddle starts out slow, maybe there's somebody who still believes and I can try and make a trade. But overall, I'm feeling like it's a solid, well-rounded team. And having a bit of an advantage at quarterback and tight end is also going to be nice I know who I'm targeting on the waiver wire, and that's running backs and wide receivers.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you have that kind of team that if you're the one that lucks out and happens to get this year's Puka Nacua, your team could be a monster. Because that's kind of where you're weak. And I agree with your kind of like how you evaluated the team. I think from looking at your team, and this is super easy for us to say when we've just done a full draft and we see the entire draft board in front of our eyes, I think the biggest swap, and I'd be curious how you would think here, is I think the Zamir White pick, if you would replace that with a different wide receiver, knowing you could get a Brian Robinson, Chase Brown a couple rounds later, you might still have some upside running backs on the bench with a little more security at wide receiver. But also Zamir White has upside as well. So, that's kind of the game we're playing. So just a quick run through my team here. We got Brock Purdy at quarterback, Breece Hall, Derrick Henry at running back, Devontae Adams, Michael Pittman at wide receiver, Pat Freiermuth here at tight end. Then in the flex position, we have James Cook, Jaden Reed, and then kind of the highlights of my bench here: Calvin Ridley, Brian Robinson, Chase Brown, and then my flyer picks: Dontavian Wicks, Ty Chandler, Tyler Algier, and Ben Sinnott. And I really like it. I got to say, I think if I had known some of these tight ends would double up, maybe I would have looked a little earlier. In a normal sense, if I was going to wait on tight end, I would have loved to end up with someone more in the Dallas Goedert, Jake Ferguson range. I think I would have preferred that to Pat Freiermuth, but it kind of is nitpicking, and I really don't think there's much difference between those guys. And like we went over earlier, a lot of guys did take two tight ends. Now, I am probably going to be losing out to half the league at quarterback every week, and I am kind of depending on Pat Freiermuth to be a consistent play. But I think I can beat some people at flex, and that's kind of just the give and take of this game, right? And maybe I hit on some of these flexes, and I can trade for a tight end or something. That's really kind of how it comes down. So,
no, for sure. There's going to be teams like mine who went quarterback, tight end heavy, who I get one injury, DeAndre Swift goes down or Puka Nacua goes down, and all of a sudden I'm like, I am so thin at one position, where then I'm happy to make a trade to tear down a tight end because I need that depth. So I never hate taking value when it's there and getting bench players before filling out the starters on my team, because I feel like it does give you some more options, especially when it comes time to trading. But
yeah, and that's what mock drafts are about as well. I was talking to my coworker the other day, and he was talking about how when he drafts, he has to be at his computer. He has to have all his stuff set up. And I was like, honestly, I tend to be okay doing it from my phone if necessary. But also I'm lucky that I've done 100 freaking mock drafts. And that kind of is this ebb and flow, that the more prepared you are, to kind of see oh, okay, I've seen quarterbacks go on a run like this. and then I remember what I did and I liked or I didn't like my team, and you auto-correct kind of from that situation. But I think for us now, thank you guys for tuning in. I want to keep this live stream under an hour. We're at 55 minutes. This is kind of just Andy and I's test here. Do a fun little mock draft. Just if you guys want to check it out, you can, my suggestion, click this video on, put it on ×2, and just kind of listen to it in the background, get some information, stop if there's something you feel is a little more pertinent to your team. But Andy, any last notes from a mock draft or just mock drafts in general for people that are kind of looking at this as maybe a new tool for them that they haven't really tried out yet?
No, I say do as many as you can, especially when you're just going against a computer. It doesn't take very long. Do it from different spots. Try different builds. Don't take the same player every time. If you find somebody who keeps falling to you that you love, try not taking that player, not taking that position and pivoting, and just see how your team winds up. And then, be ready to be fluid on draft day, because especially in an actual draft, things can go off the rails fairly quick, and either players fall that you didn't expect, or there's runs that you didn't expect. And, it just helps you be ready, like you said.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just don't. The only mistake I think you can make with mock drafts is don't expect your draft to be like your mock draft. They are a tool to get you ready for your mock draft. And definitely something, and maybe this is just me, but something that I do sometimes is when I'm doing mock drafts and I see some crazy weird stuff happen, sometimes I don't take advantage of the team I've been given. Like, oh my God, Christian McCaffrey fell to 1-6. My team's awesome at the 1-6. Sometimes I tend to just not take the guy because I want to see more what my team ends up at. But in general, thank you guys for tuning in to our first live mock draft. We're going to be coming at you with some more specific and shorter videos to help you with each round and kind of walk through some of these decisions I make. But Andy, thank you for coming on, buddy. And
thanks, man.
We're excited that August is here now, August 1st today, and it's redraft season. So thank you guys, and peace.